Jeremy in Maryland.
Hey, how's it going, Matt?
Pretty good.
Right.
And Jen, this is great. This is the dream team. I'm happy to be here.
Hey,
Matt, I did first.
All right.
I wanted to give you a quick update.
Take that, Tracy.
I called us a couple of.
I'm sorry, Tracy's here too, and so when you call us the dream team, roar.
Hey, you guys are all amazing. This is the one that I saw on YouTube probably 8 years ago that I was screaming at my, computer because I was like, I could argue my religion so much better than this. And then I realized, no, I can't.
Awesome. Well, what did you have for us?
I wanted to give you a quick update. First, I called you a couple of months ago asking for advice. You and John Icoletti were on, and I was asking for advice on breaching the topic of my sister's theism or non-theism as it stood.
Yeah.
And I finally got a chance to talk to her about a month ago, and it turns out that she's been an atheist for about a year, and she's actually wanted to talk to me about it.
It's amazing how often something like that happens.
So thank you very much for that advice. But I did have a topic I wanted to discuss today, which was, as it's written there, toxicity in the online skeptic community. So I know that you went to Mythicon this year, and the experience was probably a mixed bag. So when you came back, it was a couple of months ago, and I haven't had a chance to call in since then, but I wanted to discuss with you. You said that you had gotten a chance to meet Sargon, along with Shoe on Head and Armored Skeptic, and you said you had a problem with Sargon, which I agree with you on. There's a lot of problems to have with Sargon, but that you didn't have a problem with Armored Skeptic and Shoe on Head. So my quarrel with that is that I think Armored Skeptic and Shoe on Head represent kind of a really divisive movement within what people are calling the skeptosphere, like the YouTube skeptic community.
So I need to clear this up. I was talking about, so I tend to judge people based on my interactions with them, unlike, and this is a good cautionary tale as well for everybody out there in Twitter land, stop assuming that everybody you interact with has seen all the same YouTube clips that you have. I have never watched, right until MythCon, I'd never seen a single minute of Sargon, Shoe on Head, or Armored Skeptic. I don't watch those videos on YouTube. You know what else? I don't listen to podcasts. I've been on stage with Sam Harris 7 times. I don't think, maybe it's 5, 6, whatever. I don't listen to his podcast. I've heard snippets of his podcast at various times. My wife started the Godless Bitches podcast. The only time I listened to that was when I was actually in the room or editing it to post it. I don't listen to podcasts. So when I say that I had a problem with Sargon, it was because we had a conversation for about an hour and a half. The first part of it was discussing philosophy. It was fine. It's like you'd have with anybody else. And the second part of it was awful, where he decided to go down this road of trying to claim that he was right because he had more Twitter followers. And that's when I realized that he was an asshole and he was drunk, and it was pointless to continue having a conversation with him. And then the next day at the convention, he said all kinds of awful garbage that got massive cheers from the deplorables who were in attendance. Now, my interaction with Shoe and Armored, we had pleasant, short conversations. I didn't have any problems with them. And what they said on stage, I understood. I didn't necessarily agree with all of it, but I understood where they were coming from in what they were complaining about. And I'm sorry that I'm open to seeing nuance enough to where I'm not going to just denounce anybody and everybody. I've been under fire for 2 weeks now. It's over now, but for not saying exactly what somebody else wanted me to say, time frame that they wanted me to say it. Well, that's never going to happen. I'm not going to pass your purity test, not yours, the people I'm talking to, and I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all that I'm not passing purity test, because what I'm trying to do is make the world a better place, have better conversations. I'm going to fail. I'm going to end up associated or on stage with somebody who somebody else thinks is terrible. And it doesn't matter whether it's just me and Tracy on stage. Somebody thinks I'm terrible, somebody thinks Tracy's terrible, or if I'm on stage with whoever. So the only reason to clear that up is it almost sounded like, oh, Matt has a problem with Sargon, but he's okay with Armored Skeptic. And all I'm saying is I didn't have any issues with them then, and I understood where they were coming from. Now, they might have the most awful content that I've just never seen and never engaged with. I just don't know.
Sure. I certainly wouldn't expect you to hate somebody after one conversation or hate them at all. I don't.
Oh, it's happened.
They're bad.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some people. Carl Benjamin, we can.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
It's even easier once you watch one of his videos. But I just think that there's a difficulty these days in referring to yourself as a skeptic online. I try and be very open about, what I believe, and the difficulty becomes that there's a decently large movement, and I'm sure you can probably attest for how large it is, because you had whole crowds cheering for Sargon, essentially calling somebody too ugly to rape on stage.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I bring up Armored Skeptic and Joan Head because I know that you've interacted with them before, so I didn't want to bring up somebody that you were completely unfamiliar with. But I think that they're in their own way a part of it. Essentially, what's happened online in the past couple of years is that the word skeptic has become synonymous with anti-PC, anti-SJW, anti-feminism, anti-science denial. But the science denial they're referring to is not in any way current science, and it's not in any way good science. I don't
agree.
I don't agree with that either. And what I would say is that I think that there's a number of self-proclaimed skeptics out there who think that because they've rejected, Bigfoot and God and, lots of other conspiracy theories and stuff, that somehow they have a lock on the truth, whatever that is, no matter what it is, and that they don't have to continue to do the hard work to come to the right conclusion for the right reason.
And the part that you kind of suggested that skepticism has become synonymous with these positions, and I don't even know that that's the case. I think
not in any traditional sense. There's a lot of online communities, and I think specifically on YouTube.
Get out of them. This is the thing, and I'll tell you this: if this is comforting at all, on several of the events we did, there were 3,600 people in the audience, and I managed to get to talk to quite a few of them afterwards. Most people have no idea who these people are you just named, what's going on. Their view of this is, hey, we're going out to listen to so-and-so talk because there's a big podcast, or they go to, so there's like the online, there's the YouTube community, then there's the blog community, then there's the convention community, then there's the event community. It's not like there's one secular community or one skeptic community or one atheist community. And what ends up happening is some of the loudest voices, if you're hanging out in the Twitter sphere, end up being perceived as representative, just as when the news reports yet another school shooting, the perception is that these things are increasing when there's evidence to show that they are decreasing, but it doesn't matter because one is too many. And so we live in a world now where you're constantly being fed through algorithms and through who you've decided to follow more information that supports your view. And what I've tried to do is get out there and get in the thick of it and find out as much as I can. I'm not saying my sample set's even remotely perfect, what people think about all this. And the truth is, most of the online drama and fighting and the red pill, blue pill, incel, blah, 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 the overwhelming majority of people who would consider themselves part of the secular community know nothing about it at all.
I would agree with you that, yes, the overwhelming majority probably would be completely outside of it. I think my worry is more for people like probably the more moderate voices on, within these communities, though. You've got people on YouTube like Cosmic Skeptic and Rationality Rules who are, I'm sure I think you might have heard of Cosmic Skeptic. I think guys might have talked before.
We have. We were going to do a video together. We just haven't got around to it. But I just did a video with Rationality Rule the other day.
So the difficulties that I see there is that you've got people who, and this happened with Thunderfoot back in the day to a certain extent as well. You've got people who may fall on one side or the other of any particular issue, but sort of have to placate to very, I would say, even religious nonsense to maintain their fandoms among the skeptic community online. I mean, Rationality Rules, before he does a takedown of Jordan Peterson's definition of truth, he has to placate to Jordan Peterson just so his fans won't tear him apart because he knows that his fans probably love Jordan Peterson.
I watched that video.
Kind of difficult.
It's one of the handful that I watched before he and I worked together, or right after. I don't think that that's placating. I think that he is engaging in the sort of honest conversation, because I'm going to sit on stage with Jordan Peterson in a couple weeks in Toronto, and I think he's incredibly intelligent. There are many things that we agree on, and then there are some things that we disagree on, and then there are some times where it sounds like word soup is pouring out of his mouth instead of anything rational. I mean, there are people referring to him as the Deepak Chopra of Christianity. I'm not going to sit down on...
I generally agree with that.
What is better in that situation if you have a message you want to get across? I think the best thing is for me to acknowledge where we agree, to acknowledge that we're both rational, intelligent individuals, and we're both going to make mistakes, and then go after the point where we have some disagreement. If I walk out on stage and go, man, it's so awesome to be here with the Deepak Chopra of Christianity, what kind of word salad are you going to throw at us today, Jordan? Not only does that not accurately represent what I think of him on the whole, but it's absolutely poison for a conversation. So what I think Stephen did, I don't think that was placating. I think he was saying, look, I'm not saying that this guy is an idiot or that he's not knowledgeable. I'm not saying that we don't agree. I'm saying that when asked about truth, his view of truth is a bizarre redefinition that almost nobody should recognize.
I would agree, but it was in the specific words that he used. I would find it difficult, and maybe this is just because of my own personal...
He's British.
I would find it difficult taking an objective look at Peterson's arguments to refer to anything he says as a staunch defense of biological facts. Maybe that's just my personal views getting in the way, but it's difficult for me to hear that and think, are you actually looking at this in a skeptical and rational view, or are you hearing his words because you agree with them, or do you just think that your fans won't like it if you start talking shit about him?
Well, I can tell you this. I put videos up on Patreon, and that means that the overwhelming majority of that's where my income comes from. And I've been doing it for 3+ years, and not once have I ever tried to say anything or tried to avoid saying something based on whether or not somebody was going to donate again. My entire mission is to tell you what I think and why, and to challenge what other people believe, and to do it as honestly and fairly as possible. And if that means I get 20,000 patrons who are donating money and I'm filthy rich, awesome. And if it means I lose all of them, I'll find another way to make money, and I'll keep putting out the content that I'm putting out. I think it might be a mistake to start suggesting motivations that, I have to say this about Jordan or I'll lose fans.
Yeah, I think that kind of pandering pretty well guarantees that you're going to become irrelevant, at least in our circles. We're not politicians, so,
Which is good, because
yeah.
I wouldn't be elected to anything.
So.
I guess in response to that, well, people are coming to your Patreon for you. They kind of know what you're about. I mean, you've been a very open and vocal face among the atheist and skeptic and secular communities for a very long time now.
But
they know they kind of know what they're getting with you. I mean, on YouTube it's a little different because you've got to build an audience from similarities.
But Stephen's on Patreon and YouTube. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, the thing about that though is that the fact that people kind of know what they're getting with Matt doesn't stop them from coming at him sometimes and accusing him of being, I see the feminazis got to you, the SJWs have taken over Matt, all kinds of crap.
I've been accused of anything and everything from both sides.
Yeah, from both sides. I mean,
I am the only SJW mansplaining MRA jackass on the planet, evidently. It's been fun. You may be right that there's part of that there, but so we're running short on time. There's a bunch of callers. Because we danced around it. What is it that you're concerned about, and do you have something we can do about it?
I guess my concern is that whether or not we should really be focusing a little more on calling out the more aggressively toxic voices within the community, because it seems to me like you've got. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was this, or I guess it may have been about 2 months ago now, It was this guy, Andy Warski, who's big in he doesn't even call himself a skeptic, but he's big within the skeptosphere, who broke the YouTube live stream record by having a conversation with Sargon and like several white nationalists, including Richard Spencer, where essentially all they did was circle jerk each other about, why we should start an ethno state and argue over the exact implementation of it, referring to it as a nuanced both sides conversation. They broke the records for viewership. They broke records for donations. I mean, I think they made something like $100,000 that night on donations alone. And it was it was essentially very specifically white nationalists referring to themselves as Nazis. And I think that's a very extreme version of it. But I think we're seeing similar things within that community. And I wonder, do you think that there is a responsibility for the people trying to push for positive atheism, positive skepticism, and secularism,
to do what?
Be more vocal about calling these guys out?
How do you be more vocal about calling them out? Because first of all, I'm
not 100% sure. I don't have a platform, so I'm not 100%
Well,
sure.
I didn't even hear about this.
Yeah.
And I don't even, the only person you named who I even know is Carl.
Yeah.
And vaguely know him. I think one of the things is somebody broke a YouTube record. Do we know what the impact of that was? And aren't there other voices out there offering countering opinions? I bet you somebody has gone through that video and fisked it and basically gone line by line, and here's what's wrong, and here's what's wrong.
Do we even know that it was actually a record that was broken, or did they just issue a press release saying they
No,
broke the record?
it was a record that was broken. I looked into it after. I mean, the difficulty I'm seeing is that they're also not above deplatforming people who are speaking against them. There's a couple of people.
Well, nobody is deplatforming more people than the far left. That's just a fact. Nobody has been advocating for deplatforming more than people on the far left.
That's accurate. You're right. That's true. But I think their idea of we should deplatform people is that we should harass the website until they see things our way, whereas these guys' idea of deplatforming is we should, spam flag tweets, we should, call in accusations about this guy being a pedophile. I mean, there's a couple of people who
But some of those things you can actually take action about. If somebody's calling in threats, and we've had people call the venues where people were going to be, not necessarily where I was. They did this against MythCon. MythCon had to get extra insurance and security. I don't know that is remotely a good way to make your case. In much the same way that some of my friends are advocates for punching Nazis, and I am vehemently opposed to it because I think it's strategically stupid and also humanistically immoral. And you have to recognize that some of this is the consequence of allowing people to express their ideas. Because for every person who thinks that, hopefully, I was going to say for every person who thinks Richard Spencer's terrible, there's somebody who thinks that I'm terrible. Hopefully that's not quite the case. But the point is that, as long as we're talking about speech, I don't know what can be done other than expressing opposition, combating bad speech with better speech, making sure that, for example, nobody deserves a platform or deserves an audience or has a right. Like if I'm on stage during the Q&A, I'm offering some of my time to that person to ask a question. And it's still my time. I can cut them off whenever I want. I can have them escorted from the building. Those are options. When we're here on the TV show, we could have a guest in. Let's imagine for a minute that something overcame us and Jen and I decided to have Carl come in here and talk. At any moment, we can escort him out of the building to thunderous applause. And we've done nothing wrong. Free speech from the standpoint of the government to make sure that we all have the right to say things without consequences and to be on public land, to stand on the steps of the Capitol, provided you do the paperwork to reserve a time. But this is a private show in our private building. And people need to realize that universities, even public universities, have put restrictions on things. You can table in this area, you can preach in this area, and they get to do that. But if they are going to have a rule that says student groups get to bring in their invited speakers, and the young conservatives decide that they're going to bring in Milo, and the Secular Student Alliance decides they're going to bring in me, if you start setting up policies specifically to shut down Milo, you're probably shutting me down as well, and others. And so, hey, protest, because students at universities are the customers, and the university has to make a decision. Oh, what kind of reputation do we want? Where is this going to cost us money? Are people going to want to come to our school? There's lots of different avenues that don't involve property destruction, that don't involve punching people, that don't involve calling in inaccurate threats of, oh, you're going to be in danger. It actually happened to an event here in Austin that I wasn't actually a part of, but I was a party to, where people started calling the venue to say, oh, you're getting ready to have a dangerous rapist on stage. And that's not necessarily the case. I don't know. I went off on a sidetrack there, but I get the frustration, but I also see that what's happening a lot in the community is I got my bubble, you got your bubble, and your bubble is pointing out all of these things, and my bubble is pointing out all these things. And I don't know how we encourage people to get out of their bubbles. And I'm not saying that bubbles are always bad. I blocked half a dozen people that I've known for years on Facebook just in the last couple weeks. And I think that they deserved it in the sense that I'm not creating a bubble of people who agree with me. I'm removing particular toxic elements that I don't want to have to deal with on Facebook. But almost every single one of those people that I blocked is somebody that if they wanted to do a podcast interview to discuss our differences, I'd be open to that. I would sit down with almost any one of them and say, yep, let's hash this out. We'll do an episode. But that doesn't mean I want it on my Facebook page. So, and it's, oh, Matt's censoring me, or no, I'm not. I don't know. Now this all became about me instead of the issue. So let's move on.
Well, I mean,
I think I see exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up something. You initially talked about, the label skeptic as kind of having baggage now. This isn't really new, because for a long time we've been treated to people who call themselves skeptics, and when you dig into it a little bit, you find out they're climate change deniers, or they're 9/11 truthers, or they're flat earthers, or
Christians.
They're Christians. There are any number of other people that subscribe to some pretty out there beliefs. So the word has had a little problem with nailing down exactly what the individual means. It's almost not quite as bad as someone announcing that they're a Christian and you don't even know what that means.
Or with atheists too.
Or with atheists. And so when someone says I'm a skeptic, it's one of those situations where you really do have to ask them, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. And you have to do it realizing that even the most ardent advocates of skepticism who attempt to apply it as thoroughly as possible are going to be wrong about stuff, and they're going to have their special. Martin Gardner, primarily identified as the father of modern scientific skepticism, believed in God. And the best thing that I can say about that is that Martin Gardner also acknowledged that he wasn't being skeptical about God. It was just something he preferred to believe. It worked for him. He never claimed that this was a result of his skepticism. As a matter of fact, he pointed out that he thought atheists had the better arguments, but this was just the one thing that he wasn't putting up there for his skepticism, which is about as good as you can do as a skeptic, is to say, yep, I got this belief, which I know isn't supported by skepticism, and that's the best I can do, is acknowledge I'm not being skeptical enough on this issue.
Okay.
But I don't know that there's any answers, other than maybe everybody should delete Facebook and Twitter and, I don't know, go out and talk to people in real life.
YouTube comments, Matt. I don't know if that gets us anywhere.
Well, I actually like going out and talking to people like person to person, because it's amazing the shit people don't say when you're standing face to face with them that they will say under their, account 452 anonymous Twitter thing.
Yeah.
And also I think, I love the internet. It's, It's where religions go to die, and it's got massive appeal, and there's loads of information. There's probably too much information. There's probably not enough access to be able to go through and vet specific information. And so you're constantly at risk of going, oh, well, Jen posted this, so that's good enough. I know Jen.
Yeah.
She's not going to post some garbage. Oh, Matt posted this.
I've posted garbage before.
Every one of us have. I've shared, and I'll tell you what I really hate. I used to love The Onion. I can't stand it or any other satire anymore because...
Is it too close to home?
Well, not only is it too close to home, but there's too many people who are otherwise reasonable and incredibly intelligent who are going to fall for it, share it. And because that person is reasonable, intelligent, the people on their list who may not be so much are also going to share it. And I can't count the number of times. I don't post that much on Facebook and I don't comment that much. But I'd say probably 5% of every post I've ever made or every comment I've ever made that wasn't about like a 20-page drama thing has been, this is a satire article, this is a satire article. Because it's so easy to believe. And there was one that's evidently real that I thought was satire just yesterday, which is that, is it in Pennsylvania where they're going to arm students and teachers with rocks?
Oh, yeah.
How real is that? Is that real?
I don't know.
Oh, God.
I didn't look into it too much, but it was from several news sources that looked credible, that weren't satire. But that's the other thing, is some of these credible news sources have a satire section.
Yeah.
That should never be allowed.
Well, you've heard the latest controversy, right? In California, they're teaching kids math using Arabic numerals.
Oh my goodness.
Arabic. Can you believe
in my
it?
America.
Oh my gosh, the Muslims are going to take over.
Shakira law.
Yeah.
We should be using Roman numeral. Oh crap, that's Catholics. Anyway, I'm going to try and get to some more calls before we get done, but I appreciate the time.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much, Jen. You guys have a great day.
Thanks,
You
Jerry.
too.